Have you ever pictured yourself owning a piece of paradise? Maybe a little plot of land on the incredible island of Sri Lanka? You'd think it's simple, right? Find a spot, buy it, it's yours. But when you start asking who can actually own land there, you realize you've just stumbled into one of the most complicated questions in the whole country. So, let's get into it. It seems so basic, doesn't it? But the answer is, well, it's not just about having the money. In Sri Lanka, land ownership is tangled up in this complex web of state policy, national identity, and, believe it or not, centuries-old traditions that are still legally enforced today. And to make sense of any of it, you have to start with the biggest landowner of all. Just look at that number, 80%. It's kind of staggering when you think about it. According to the government's own official guidelines, a full 80% of all land in Sri Lanka is owned by the state. That's right, 4 out of every 5 acres don't belong to a person or a company, they belong to the government. And this isn't just some vague idea on paper. This state ownership is managed by a really intricate system. You've got official documents like the Government Land Management Guideline you see here, and they work together with the whole library of laws to decide how this land gets used, leased, and given out. This massive state control, it's the foundation for literally everything else we're about to talk about.
Okay, so what does this actually mean in practice? Let's start with the first big rule that you run into. If you're not a Sri Lankan citizen, the laws for getting your hands on land are totally different. It's a pretty clear line drawn in the sand. So back in 2013, a cabinet decision basically said that foreigners are, for the most part, not allowed to buy land outright. You can't be gifted it, you can't be granted it. The main way a non-citizen or a foreign company can hold land is through a long-term lease, and that lease is capped at 99 years. As you can probably guess, a law like this kicked off a huge public debate.
On one side of that debate, you heard voices like this one, taken from public comments made at the time. And the feeling here is pretty clear. Look, Sri Lanka is a small island. Land is its most precious resource, so it has to be protected for its own people. It's an argument that really comes from a place of national preservation.
But then, of course, there's the other side of the coin, the counter-argument, which is all about fairness and reciprocity. This comment captures that worry perfectly. You have lots of Sri Lankans who live and invest overseas, buying property in places like New Zealand. And they're asking a pretty simple question. If we shut our doors, what's going to stop other countries from shutting their doors on us?
The rules for foreigners, that's one thing. But now let's pivot to a set of laws that create hurdles for people within Sri Lanka, specifically for women. These rules might not get the same international attention, but man, are they deeply woven into the country's legal fabric. Right at the core of this issue is a law called the Land Development Ordinance. It was passed way back in 1935, but it is still in effect today. And when it comes to inheriting land that was granted by the state, the law isn't neutral. It explicitly, in writing, gives priority to men. And no, that's not some kind of accidental loophole. It's written right into the legal code. So here's how that priority actually works. Let's say a person who holds a state land permit passes away. The first person in line to inherit is a son. It's only if there are no sons that the daughters get the land. And if there are no daughters, it then goes to the grandsons. This legal ladder means a woman can literally be passed over in favor of her own male relatives, which, you can see, has a direct impact on her financial security. And if you thought that was complex, well, it gets even more so, because layered on top of this general law, Sri Lanka has several other traditional legal systems that are still running, and they apply to specific communities. So a woman's right to property can also depend on whether she comes from a Kandyan, that's a Valamai, or Muslim family background. And these traditional systems, they create their own very specific rules. For instance, under Kandanian law, if a woman marries and moves to her husband's home, she could actually forfeit her right to her father's property. Under this Valamai law, she might need her husband's written permission to sell property that is legally hers. Or under Muslim law, if a father dies without a will, daughters often inherit a smaller share than sons. These aren't just old customs. They are active legal rules affecting people's lives right now. Now, Sri Lanka has had major land reforms over the years. The Act of 1972 is a big one. But these specific tradition-based inheritance laws, they've mostly been left alone. And this has fueled a debate that activists have been pointing to for decades. At what point does the law need to change? Should it prioritize protecting cultural tradition, or should it be updated to reflect modern ideas of equality?
So, okay, we've looked at state control, rules for foreigners, and gendered inheritance. What's the big picture here? Why does all this matter? Let's try and pull all these different threads together.
So what have we really learned? First, it all starts with that massive 80% state ownership. Everything else flows from that. Second, we see how national policy creates this really passionate debate over who gets access to land, especially foreigners. And third, for women, these really deep traditions and old laws can create some serious legal and financial roadblocks to owning property. At the end of the day, these laws, they're not just words on a page. They are a living, breathing map of the country's history, its economy, and its culture. And all of this leaves us with one last big question. The laws we've talked about are a product of history, of colonialism, of nationalism, of ancient customs. But as Sri Lanka keeps changing and evolving, will those old structures hold firm? Or will a new push for transformation, for equality, start to reshape the very ground beneath people's feet? That right there is the question for the future.